What's up, everybody? My name is Alex. Welcome to The Broth, the most fun show on the internet. We're here live in the Cauldron. Today we're going to talk about Mahmoud Kalil. I felt like we're taking crazy pills lately with some of the takes I've been seeing. But we're going to get into it. We're going to clear everything up. I've made a discovery, and this guy's not who he is being presented as or who he says he is. The usual suspects again, and it's quite interesting. There's a lot going on here. First of all, I want to say make a quick prayer request for the InfoWars crew. Somebody murdered, shot through the neck, and one of their people, and then Chase Geyser, who works at InfoWars, got doxxed twice within 12 hours or 24 hours. Then someone else got doxxed. Alex Jones says, he's got friends in high places and that he's got like basically the highest level of hit on him. So he touched a nerve. And then also Gunther Eagleman, I guess, got swatted. I don't know, I muted him because he always just has like God bless him. I don't want him to be swatted or have any problems. He always kind of has, I just thought it was strange because he usually has sort of basic normie conservative takes. But I don't know. Pray for these guys. The swatting needs to carry like a serious sentence because you're trying to kill somebody. And you're trying to kill somebody by way of somebody else, which is just a disgusting way to operate. Got my out. So this is going to be a cool one. So first, I'll just give you my hot take before I looked into any of this, which was, am I on crazy pills? What is going on? Am I seeing right-wing people defending a Muslim on a green card from being deported? Like, I thought we were trying to deport people. And I know people were like, yeah, but like, we want to deport people, not like just quote unquote anti-Semites. And there's some validity to that, but like, if you want to just like, it's so lazy to use the left-wing talking points. I saw like Fuentes talking about this, and he was being specific, and he was saying, have we ever we didn't deport, were there any foreign people involved in BLM? Did we deport any of those people? That sort of thing, pointing out the hypocrisy here. But I see a lot of people just outright, they're outraged. The rights of this green card holding American permanent resident with a wife, an American wife, his First Amendment rights are being trampled on. And I just like, I don't know. I was like, what the heck is going on here? And I think I figured it out. That's a totally, I think, based on what I'm seeing, this is a totally astroturfed narrative. And we'd expect it from the left. Almost all their narratives are astroturfs, but it's on the right. And what they're doing is they're making it seem like what's at stake is you and I, as American citizens, ability to exercise their free speech and the criticism of Israel is at risk here. And I have good news. It most certainly is not. We're going to talk about that. But more interestingly, we're going to talk about who Mahmoud is. Because he's got some sketchy background. And then we're going to take a look at his talking points, how he frames the issues that he's so passionate about, that he's lived through, that he comes from as a Palestinian refugee. And we're going to compare it to some other people, see if we don't find some similarities. So, first of all, to flesh out my hot take is get this guy out of here. And not because he's criticizing Israel, because he's left-wing criticizing Israel, which means he's anti-white. He comes from Colombia, which is this is like sort of a part 2 to my last stream about Colombia and how it is a Frankfurt School part 2. And like, also just I don't really need like a big reason to deport people who aren't citizens. That's kind of what I thought we are doing here. Um, and what I find is there are people who like if any Jews are ever happy, then they're mad, and like it's not really a good. That doesn't really make sense as a way to approach politics. Um, so anyway, so who is this guy? And well, first let's get into the law here because there's been some confusion about it. I was confused about it at first too. I didn't think there was any precedent towards non-citizens having the right to free speech in our country. Apparently there is. I don't know if I agree with that. You're telling me you could come from anywhere, and as long as you're here legally within certain limits, which we'll get into, you have the same right to free speech as I do, who pays taxes every year. Um, I don't think I was in Guatemala living on a tourist visa. I'm pretty sure I don't have free speech there. I mean, they don't really have free speech there, so that's kind of a pointless comparison. But you guys get what I mean. So let's look at the law here. And the thing is that what we're looking at is immigration law. This isn't a free speech law issue, really, because the claims that are being made don't have to do with speech. And immigration law, basically what I found out is that, well, like technically they have the same free speech guarantees. The limits of what that means is a lot. There's a lot more limits than it is for you and I. So you and I have some limits to our free speech, right? The classic, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater because the purpose of that is to like create harm and chaos, right? So similarly, like, well, let's look at some laws. So USC 1227, Section A 4B, any alien is deportable if the Attorney General decides their presence or activities, quote, would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States based on, quote, reasonable ground to believe from the Secretary of State ties to terrorism or hostile foreign entities. So, yeah, like, you can't be here if we think that we don't have to prove it in a court of law. If like, yes, this is a little bit, there's a very strong authority that the government has. If you're not a citizen, they can deport you if there's reasonable ground to believe. They do not have to prove anything. You don't have to have violated a law first. Second, USC 1227 A4A1. People are deportable if engaged in activity to violate any law of the United States relating to espionage or any act of, quote, endangering public safety or national security, especially if linked to a foreign government or group. Okay, so this guy is linked to a foreign group, Hamas, that specifically, and like, you know, Hamas is not the boogeyman, but they aren't great either. And they don't love America, if you guys didn't figure that out yet. I mean, I know you guys did, but you know what I mean? Like, so, and then he's organizing protests where there is people getting assaulted, destruction of property, all that sort of stuff. He's a prime candidate for this. And then let's look at, there's a few, we'll just run through this briefly. Some judiciary precedent, why there's limits to speech. Speech creating a clear and present danger to national security, not protected. Advocacy to overthrow the government, not protected. Speech inciting illegal activity likely to produce it, not protected. The government can deny non-citizens entry for speech if it's a legitimate security call. Material support to terrorists, including speech, can be banned even if peaceful. That's a Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project 2010. So they're completely within their rights to deport this person. And anyone on the right who's saying that the government doesn't have the right to deport this person, you're really setting us up for not having the right to deport just about anybody. I know he's got a green card, but and the way that he got his green card, a little bit suspicious. This guy is not. Well, we'll get into it. Let me check my comments here. David Self, I just watched yesterday's episode for 40 minutes before I realized I was the wrong one. LOL, yo. Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for coming back, man. Thanks for being a good sport. I mean, you weren't wrong. It was just a little bit of a non sequitur. I appreciate you being here and participating. You know, go off, my guy. Say whatever you want in the chat. You know, don't abuse me or whatever. But you certainly weren't doing that. So yeah, thanks for being back. All right, so a little background on Kalil here. He was born in a Syrian refugee camp for Palestinians. So okay, that part real, right? Tough roots. Oh, that gives you so much credibility on the left. You know, you have to be basically like a trans indigenous person with cancer and pedo to top this on their hierarchy of oppressed people. But he also, so he was there, and then at 18 he went to Lebanon, and then quickly after that, the British Foreign Office, you know, the same British government that gave Israel to the Jewish people, to the Rothschilds, basically, that country, before they gave him a scholarship when he was in Lebanon, he somehow got Algerian citizenship. So he's from his parents are Palestinian. He was born in a Syrian refugee camp, went to Lebanon when he was 18 to go to university. Also Algerian citizenship, which I don't understand. British Foreign Office scholarship gave him free cash to go to school. And then he got a UN internship. Well, those people are very trustworthy. I'm sure there's nothing weird going on there. And then he goes to where? Well, Columbia University, the new Frankfurt School, as I described in in my previous episode. In other words, the same Columbia that accepted radical Marxist Jews and folded them into their university, and then received $400 million in federal money a year, or approximating every year, until Trump pulled the plug on that. Ironically, cutting off the gravy train for a radical Marxist, very Jewish school on the grounds of anti-Semitism. So he ends up there, and he joins a group called CUAD, Columbia University Apartheid Divest. And sorry, a little refreshing bubbles here. Probably was really loud in your ears, my bad. So who is CUAD? They're hardcore anti-Israel people. Sounds anti-Semitic, right? But let's see what they want to do. Divestment from Israel-linked companies, cut academic ties with Israeli schools. Now, I'm for that. I'm not opposed to that. How do they frame it, though, as radical leftists, I wonder? Very pro-Hamas. And they're fighting for, according to their words, the, quote, total eradication of Western civilization. There are pro-West nationalist people arguing that there's no grounds to deport this person. How does this organization even exist? You're allowed to have an organization at our university systems whose goal is total eradication of Western civilization? Well, yes, you are. But in Trump's America, if you're here as a guest, then no. And this seems like not a bad thing. Now, here's a twist. Kalil said in a spring 2024 CNN interview, quote, "As a Palestinian student, I believe that the liberation of the Palestinian people and the Jewish people are intertwined and go hand in hand. You cannot achieve one without the other." Are you guys seeing what I'm saying here? Is it starting to come together a little bit? David says, definitely groomed. You want things to get better for your family. We need you to work for us. Yeah, it's not a tall order that you should be pro-America if you're here as a guest. So it gets deeper. That last quote was from Kalil himself. Let's see what CUAD says about the issue of Israel genociding people. Quote, and this is from their website, I just grabbed it. We know that anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism, in particular racism against Arabs and Palestinians, are all cut from the same cloth. Western colonization, imperialism, white supremacy, and anti-blackness. Silencing Jewish voices for Palestine is arguably anti-Semitic. It conflates Judaism with Zionism and imposes, an external definition on an entire group's religion and culture. It's white people's fault again. Here, let's pull this up. Here's the quote. We're at thecolumbiaspectator.com. Columbia University Apartheid Divest. Who We Are. By Columbia University Apartheid Divest. November 14th, 2023. Okay, so there's some truth to this. Not all Jews are Zionists by any means. Some of them are on the other side of the, how do I put this? Some of them have a different idea of how their people should exert power in the world. And they criticize Israel, but they blame it on white supremacy. So I wonder if anybody else, who does this remind me of? Who does this sound like? Who else ties the apartheid or the genocide in Gaza to white supremacy? Well, for one, Judith Butler does. She's a Jewish American philosopher at UC Berkeley, known for a book called Gender Trouble. Quote, the structures of racism that affect Palestinians and Jews are not unrelated. They emerge from our colonial history that privileges certain bodies over others, a history tied to Western power and its racial hierarchies. Sounds a bit like Naomi Klein as well. She's a Canadian Jewish author of The Shock Doctrine. Quote, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, the brutal racism against Palestinians, they're all born from the same Western machine. Colonialism that divides to conquer, white supremacy that ranks human worth, an imperial order that's crushed black and brown lives for centuries. Wouldn't it be remarkable if the Jewish people had historic, religious, deeply held beliefs about racial superiority? You know, I read this, and it doesn't remind me of many Western thinkers. It reminds me of things like this. Let's see, this is from Sefaria.org. If you want to find quotes from the Talmud directly, this has the Hebrew and the English. And we have here Bava Mitzia 114b. Here it is. Jewish people are called man, but Gentiles are not called man. What else do we have? We've got in the Midrash, it's part of the, part of the same book, the Talmud. Oh, that's just bear with me for a moment. Here we are. Okay, so actually, that was my Talmud quote. And here we have JudaismAnswer.com, and the Jewish author of this writes, I have been asked many times do Jews believe that non-Jews have different souls than Jews, and that they are incapable of acting with noble intentions? This is based on a passage that appears in the Hasidic work called Tanya, which I shall quote below. The question stems from a feeling that it is not that by following Judaism one has positive spiritual advantages, but that not being born Jewish one is permanently defective and incapable of acting, quote, good. Well, it kind of sounds like the pot calling the kettle black to me. Now, I'm half Jewish. I grew up with around a lot of Jews. I did not find this attitude to be particularly prevalent, and I existed amongst them at places like a Zionist Jewish summer camp, where they would have felt very free to express themselves about this stuff. There are, though, sects, including large ones. I was among the liberal reform Zionists, which is kind of a funny category. But there's other ones that are very, very, very like this. I would say that the percentage of Jewish people who believe this is much higher than the percentage of white people that believe that they have an inherent superiority over other people. It goes on, just to continue comparing this radical, organic Palestinian refugee who is being wrongfully deported for his lawful free speech criticizing Zionism. Here's another quote that sounds exactly the same. Mark Ellis, American Jewish theologian. Anti-Semitism and the suffering of Palestinians under occupation are symptoms of the same Western disease. Imperialisms need to dominate, rooted in a racial superiority that historically targeted Jews, Arabs, and black bodies alike. Why are they always caught referring to black bodies? It's freaking weird. So it's not only is it white people's fault, but Jewish people are the victim here. Tony Jute, I got two more. British Jewish historian at NYU. The West's treatment of Jews and Arabs springs from the same imperial arrogance, a colonial mindset that dehumanizes both, underpinned by racism that's as old as Europe's conquests and as deep as its anti-black foundations. Do you know in Israel, there's black Jews, there's Ethiopian Jews, and the government sterilized them without their consent? Sarah Schulman, American Jewish writer, says, quote, the racism that fuels Islamophobia and Palestinian dispossession is the same beast that once fed anti-Semitism. It's Western colonialism's legacy and white supremacist order that's always needed an other, from Jews to Arabs to black communities. Sounds super organic, right? I'm sure that this guy, he was born a Palestinian refugee and organically went from that to one of the most prestigious universities to coordinating as a high up person in their anti-Israel organization, saying the exact same talking point, almost word for word, as these left-wing Jewish thinkers. Remarkable. I wonder if there's a word for this. The public diplomacy of Israel is Israel's effort to communicate directly with the citizens of other nations to inform and influence their perceptions, with the aim of garnering support or tolerance for the Israel's government's strategic objectives. Historically, these efforts evolved from being called propaganda by the early Zionists when the term was considered neutral, with Theodor Herzl's advocating such activities in 1899, to the more contemporary Hebrew term hasbara, introduced by Nahum Sokolow, which translates roughly to explaining. This communicative strategy seeks to justify actions and is considered reactive and event-driven. I wonder if there's some place where they might get their talking points. Hasbara Handbook promoting Israel on campus. Now, I wonder if there's something. So this is supposedly promoting Israel, but this is all criticizing Israel. It was blaming it on white people. It kind of sounds like a term that I've heard of before. What do you call that? This is a job for Grok here. What you're describing is often referred to as a controlled opposition or a false opposition. It's a strategy where someone pretends to oppose a particular stance or group while secretly working for or being aligned with the very side they claim to resist. The goal is to manipulate the narrative, confuse the real opposition, or steer discussions in a way that benefits the controlling party. This sounds a bit like steering discussions in a way that benefits the controlling party. This is white supremacy. It's not Jewish supremacy. It's not Zionism even. So, I'm glad I could set the record straight on that, because that was driving me crazy. David says this rhetoric has been very successful. It appeals to white people's empathy, which is our Achilles heel. True. Friendly says Groiper in the house. Hello. So that was that. In my preparing for this, I came across this interesting video. Let's see what's going on here. And what made me drawn to this is that it says Jewish protesters arrested after storming Trump Tower. Now, normally we've got to do a little digging to find that out, what ethnicity the protesters are. They don't normally list the ethnicity unless they're white. So I thought that was interesting. Let's see what this is all about. It's CNN, so we're gonna have to, employ a little bit of savvy. Friendly Clips is calling this Inception. They create the dream and then pull you into it and steal all your secrets. I like the way you said that.
Stormed the lobby of Trump Tower in New York City. They're demanding the release of Mahmoud Kalil, a Palestinian activist, a graduate student at NYU, or rather at Columbia University.
Okay, so the Jews are taking the side of Kalil. Kind of fits.
He's at risk of being deported after he helped lead protests against the war in Gaza at the university last year. Homeland Security officials have accused Kalil of being a Hamas sympathizer. Let's go right now outside live at Trump Tower with CNN's Omar Jimenez, who is on the scene. Omar, give us the latest.
Yeah, so Boris, about 100 people were arrested as part of this protest that took place inside Trump Tower behind me on multiple levels, 2 different levels of that main sort of lobby entrance to the tower here, as we understand from police. And they were protesting on behalf of Mahmoud Kalil, Jewish.
By the way, Trump's family lives there. I mean, I don't know who's living there right now, but like he has a place there. His family has a place there. It's a big deal.
Voice for Peace was the group that was leading these particular protests.
That said, I do want to be a little bit charitable here. I do appreciate liberal Jews who oppose Zionism. I think in many ways their heart is coming from the right place. And I think in the organic way in which, I know Jewish people who oppose Israel. My father is at least very critical of Israel. He certainly does not oppose or does not support the current administration there. My whole life, he's been pretty critical of them and how they operate. You will not find him saying that white supremacy is the blame for this. In fact, and that goes for all the Jewish people that I know that organically came to the idea that, genociding people is wrong, that treating people like second-class citizens is wrong, is white supremacy's fault. I have not seen that. But in the Hasbara manual, either literally or, people reading between the lines, this is the op. This is an op, right? They don't like it that there are Jewish people who organically oppose Israel unless they oppose it for these reasons, right? And so, yeah, like, this is how a lot of this stuff is where the Jewish people are manipulated and they're used as proxies for their oligarchs in ways that are detrimental to them and endanger their safety a lot. The Jewish people are basically used as a human shield and and what do you call that? Useful idiots for the stuff that the big boys are trying to do. So what I'm not saying is that all of these protesters are here on an op. And I'm not saying that all of these protesters by any means want the destruction of Western civilization. I think many of them might just oppose the genocide and see this guy as somebody who is a voice for that and who is a partner with the Jews. And in some sense, there's a positive thing that can be here, which is Jewish people who oppose the treatment of Palestinians partnering with Palestinians and Palestinian refugees to try to put a stop to this. That's all positive. I'm not putting a negative spin on everything here. The point is that there is a element of like, this guy does seem to have been groomed and planted here, and this guy and his organization are anti-white and anti-Western civilization, and this is Western civilization. There was another quote from this organization, I just want to say what they're called again, CUAD, saying America is the belly of the beast. So, they seem more against America than against Israel at the end of the day.
Protests that we saw. When we first got to the scene, we saw dozens of protesters in zip ties being loaded onto buses where they were taken to central booking, as we understand, from New York police. But the chants that we heard from supporters that even gathered on the outside of some of these barriers that police put in place to keep crowds sort of at bay were things like "Fight Nazis, not students," and protesting on behalf again of
the problem is those dang Nazis again. They're everywhere.
Kalil, who is still being held in ICE custody as those legal proceedings play out as well. We spoke to one of the organizers of Jewish Voice for Peace about why they wanted to come out here, and to them they said they did not want the First Amendment entrenched on, which is what they believe Kalil was doing over the course of leading some of the protests we saw out of Columbia University, but also they wanted to show solidarity from the Jewish people as well. As those were the words that one of the organizers told me as we spoke.
It just brings a tear to your eye, these Jewish patriots defending our First Amendment rights with putting their bodies on the line.
As some of her protesters were being loaded onto these buses, there were no violent incidents in regards to the arrests themselves. Once they were taken into police custody, there did not seem to be any resistance. We did not hear of any resistance from police as well, but definitely a protest that grew to over 100, as we understand, from both organizers and police, took place inside Trump Tower, organized in just a matter.
I wonder how many of these people were paid, though. Like I said, there are Jewish people who organically care about the treatment of Palestinians. But I don't know that they would really show up to Trump Tower in solidarity with Palestinians fighting for the First Amendment and being anti-Nazi and all of that. Maybe one of the things that we've been finding out lately, or that like more of the public has been finding out lately, is just how many paid protesters there are, and that's a big part of why I support. There's many reasons why I support what Doge is doing. Is like, it's really it is a waste of money. They are stopping like the waste of money and trying to balance the budget and save our country from bankruptcy. But like a lot of the left's activism is totally inorganic, and they're trying to shut off the spigot.
Of hours and happened very quickly. As we understand from a law enforcement source, the protesters initially walked into the building with jackets on, and then when they undid their jackets, it revealed the red shirts that represented the Jewish Voice for Peace. But again, a protest that resulted in about 100 arrests. No serious charges expected outside of things like trespassing of that nature. But again, a moment where organizers tell us they wanted their voices to be heard in support of Mahmoud Kalil.
Omar Jimenez live for us in Manhattan. Thank you so much, Omar. Brianna?
Joining us now, CNN senior national security analyst Juliet Kayyem. So Juliet, over 120 people entering Trump Tower, a law enforcement official telling CNN at the height of this. Tell us a little bit about that security setup there now that it's not Trump's official residence.
Yeah, so I'm surprised by this. I would have assumed that just given the public nature of Trump's commercial activities, it would be very difficult to have.
Look what I just found.
It was clearly a secret
Hang on.
plan.
I just looked up who funds Jewish Voices for Peace. JVP isn't fully transparent about its donors, but some details have surfaced through public records and investigations. George Soros and Open Society foundations. There's evidence Soros-linked entities have supported JVP. The Open Society foundations, founded by Soros, have funneled money through intermediaries like the Tides Foundation, a left-leaning grant-making group. Reports suggest JVP received at least $650,000 from Open Society Foundation since 2017. Oh, so they are being paid, and by George Soros. Well, I guess it's Alex Soros, but the Soros Foundation. Oh, well, let's see who the next person or the next funder is. Rockefeller Brothers Fund. This philanthropic outfit has directly granted JVP nearly $500,000 over 5 years, roughly from 2018 to 2023. And that's what's known. It doesn't mean that they stopped. Let's see. Also, foundations like the Kaphan, Kaphan Foundation, the Schwab Charitable Fund, the Quiddiplus Foundation, well, that was not surprising.
And protest, and they were arrested as they should be. They trespassed, but they were also nonviolent, and this country has a long tradition of nonviolent protest. We'll see what
A long tradition of George Soros and the Rockefellers funding protests too.
what's decided about them. I have no doubt that there will be increased surveillance and security around Trump's commercial entities. And this is the interesting thing about Trump, without getting into whether he should or shouldn't do it. And we saw this with Elon Musk with the Teslas.
Yeah, the follow-up conversation is going to be, can we theorize anything about what Trump's doing here, or his administration is doing?
They've broken down the distinction between their public roles and their private commercialization, monetization roles. You are seeing these protests touch them in their commercial space. We saw this with Elon Musk and attacks on Tesla, as well as now this.
Yeah, those are funded by left-wing organizations too, the attacks on the Teslas. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. I don't want to get flagged for copyright, so I'm going to skip around a little bit. I think that'll work.
And the First Amendment.
So these arrests, charging people with obstructing government administration for failing to move when the dispersal order came because the location is private property, and in certain cases resisting arrest. Tell us about those charges.
Police reports, do they have past criminal activity. For some of these people, it may be a fine community service of this kind of activity. The interesting thing about this is this was
Tell us what the
organized by
interesting
a
thing about it
Jewish
is.
group. So the narrative
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian equals pro-Hamas Arabs that is often used, and it was used in Mahmoud's case, Kalil's case, is harder to make against Jewish organizations. I have no doubt that that's why they did it, because there's
That I agree with, and that's a good thing. You can be pro-Palestine and not pro-Hamas. You can be pro-Palestine and not hate Jewish people. You know, the people that I align with don't hate any of these people. We don't want to be involved over there. We don't want these people funding protests in our country. We don't want foreigners that are, you know, potentially groomed by international spy agencies or NGOs stirring stuff up in our country. We don't want foreign governments being the largest donor to our politicians here. We don't want Israeli flags in the offices of our politicians in America. You know?
great diversity within the Jewish American population about what's going on.
And I don't want any of these people dying in any wars, and I don't want U.S. to be dragged into any of them either.
Divisions amongst them, and I think that's a very important part of this narrative of who it was organized by and why.
All right, Juliet Kayam, thank you so much. Had called for additional units. Do you think that's probably something they're going to have in place temporarily?
And a very animated community in New York amongst the sort of, I would say, the Israeli and constituencies. There's diversity within those constituencies, as I was saying. Demands of Trump Towers. He needs them to be open. You can't close them. I mean, those are, as you know, those are retail spaces on the top, on a variety of floors. Or people come in and out, and that's the commercial part of it. And we've never dealt with this before because we've never had a president who had commercial activities consistent with or parallel with his political position, President of the United States, or an Elon Musk.
Right. Normally our presidents haven't created anything.
You can't close it down, but we do need to protect people within the towers and protect the rights of parties. But just to take a step back, there's a long tradition of protests. There's a long tradition of arrest and trespass around that. It sounds like that's what happened.
All right. Let's go to the end here.
Donald Trump wants to increase the focus around this arrest for reasons that have almost nothing to do with anti-Semitism or even immigration at this stage.
I completely agree. Hold on.
Focus around the case basis, but I don't think that, this is not one of those things where it's like domestic terrorism or anything like that, though I highly believe that Donald Trump wants to increase the focus around this arrest for reasons that have almost nothing to do with anti-Semitism or even immigration at this stage.
Officials have...
I couldn't agree more with that. She doesn't say what they are. But yeah, that's sort of my working theory, is that he's not deporting this person because of the being against Israel's actions, and he's not deporting this person because of this person being anti-Jewish. It's because this is part of a network of operatives that have been shaping the agenda in the United States and manipulating us and manipulating our politics. And these are the people that Trump is at war with. So that is how I view what's going on. Back. All right. Yeah, Jake. Yeah, Jake Shields was saying it's hard to find a trustworthy source on the Talmud. I would say that this is it. This is sort of a for Jews by Jews reference, and it does clean up a couple things. I think, but maybe not. Maybe the quotes that I saw where it was cleaner on here were actually the correct ones and made dirtier. But you'll find the most controversial quotes in here, and it certainly gives you enough to form a strong opinion about the Talmud. So, all right, well, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys for dropping in. David, you're my friend, David, aren't you? I thought you were in here under a different name, so then I thought this one was somebody else, but I assume it's you. But anyway, love you, buddy. Actually, shout out to David for being the first person to suggest to me that this guy might be a spy. That was what put me on this rabbit hole in the first place. So, yeah, hell yeah. So, yeah, much love, you guys. I'll see you. Tomorrow's Friday. Yeah, I'll be in tomorrow. I might be a little late tomorrow. Got to go to town. We're meeting with the priest about getting married in the church, which is very exciting. And, yeah, I hope you guys have a blessed day. Everybody stay safe out there.